Look, everyone says it's a mystery how old a silo is.
For 2 seasons, Silo has asked one question without ever saying it out loud. Who built this world? We know why the people inside the silos believe they're underground. We know the outside world became poisoned. We know generations have lived and died without ever learning the truth. But until now, the architects behind humanity's greatest prison have remained invisible. Season 3 changes that in its opening hour, and it does so in a way that completely reframes the entire series. Instead of following Juliette through another mystery inside Silo 18, the story suddenly pulls us hundreds of years into the past, introducing 3 people who seem completely disconnected from everything we've watched so far. A congressman named Daniel Keane, his sister Charlotte, and a journalist named Helen Drew. At first glance, they look like ordinary people living ordinary lives on the eve of an international crisis. But the episode quietly reveals that these 3 individuals aren't just new characters. They're the missing pieces to the biggest mystery Silo has been hiding since episode 1. Because if the clues are pointing in the right direction, we're finally watching the birth of the silos themselves. If you enjoy theories that go beyond the obvious and uncover the hidden storytelling buried beneath every episode, you're in the right place. Every video on this channel is researched and written completely from scratch, connecting clues from the show, the source material, and details hidden in plain sight. If that's the kind of content you enjoy, consider subscribing. It genuinely helps the channel continue making these deep dives for fellow Silo fans. And with that said, this is your spoiler warning because we're breaking down major reveals from the Silo Season 3 premiere. The first thing that stands out is how different this timeline feels. Previous seasons trapped us inside concrete walls, narrow staircases, and mechanical rooms where every answer had been buried beneath decades of propaganda. Suddenly, we're standing in a modern Washington, D.C., surrounded by trains, government buildings, smartphones, and news reports. It feels like an entirely different television series, but that's exactly why the opening works so well. The writers want us to experience the same shock Juliette experienced when she stepped outside for the first time. For years, the silos have made the past feel almost mythical. Season 3 reminds us that before humanity lived underground, people lived ordinary lives, argued about politics, worried about relationships, and believed tomorrow would arrive just like every other day. Looking back, that normality becomes one of the darkest parts of the episode, because the audience already knows what these characters don't. Their world is running out of time. The biggest surprise is Daniel Keane. On the surface, he's introduced as an ambitious congressman trying to balance politics with his personal life. He speaks about serving the people rather than chasing power, and unlike many politicians we've seen in television dramas, Daniel genuinely appears to believe public service means protecting ordinary citizens.
I tell you what, Congressman, you put me on your do not call list and you got my vote next go around.
That honesty immediately separates him from the people surrounding him, but the show quietly plants details that reveal Daniel is much more important than an idealistic lawmaker. During conversations with Charlotte, we learn he once served as an army engineer and studied architecture.
I was in the army.
You're an engineer.
And now I'm in Congress.
Those details don't sound significant at first, but the writers didn't choose those professions by accident. Architecture is about designing structures meant to endure. Military engineering is about constructing systems capable of surviving catastrophe. Together, they form the exact combination of skills someone would need to create something as enormous and complex as the silos. That revelation becomes even more intriguing once Senator Thurman enters the story. Their conversation feels almost routine, with Thurman encouraging Daniel to join the Iran Committee. Yet, hidden beneath the political language is something much larger. Thurman doesn't simply want Daniel's vote, she wants his expertise. Looking back, the meeting feels less like a political recruitment and more like the first move in a carefully orchestrated plan. The audience already knows the world is approaching disaster. The only missing question is who already knows it's coming. Every scene involving Thurman suggests she possesses information that hasn't reached the public. Daniel believes he's being invited to solve an international crisis. In reality, he may already be stepping into the project that will decide humanity's future. Then there's Charlotte, whose storyline quietly delivers one of the episode's most heartbreaking twists. She's introduced as a confident Navy pilot, someone who understands the risks of military service but never expects to become part of history herself. When she's deployed after the attack on Washington, she enters what appears to be a routine, retaliatory mission. Instead, She flies directly into a strange cloud unlike anything we've seen before. The aircraft systems begin failing. A dark substance spreads across her instruments. Communication collapses. Within moments, the mission transforms from military action into something resembling science fiction. That sequence isn't simply showing us an aircraft accident. It's introducing the true nature of the catastrophe threatening the entire planet. When Charlotte survives the crash, the consequences are devastating. Her traumatic brain injury leaves her unable to recognize her own brother.
Who are you?
On the surface, it's an emotional family tragedy, but the writers quietly create another connection that feels impossible to ignore. Earlier in the episode, Juliette struggles with missing memories inside Silo 18. Now Charlotte suffers memory loss in the before times. Two women living centuries apart experience remarkably similar conditions in the very same premiere. That parallel feels intentional. One loses memories because of physical trauma, the other because someone is deliberately suppressing it. By placing those stories side by side, the episode invites us to ask whether memory itself has always been one of the central themes of Silo.
I think what I'm trying to ask you is, did I say anything to you? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Because throughout history, controlling what people remember has always been one of the most effective forms of control. Then there's Helen Drew, who initially appears to be the least important member of this trio. She isn't a politician or a soldier, she's a journalist. But in stories like Silo, journalists are often the first people to recognize that something doesn't add up. Her awkward meeting with Daniel reveals that she's already investigating the government's response to the attacks and asking questions nobody else seems willing to answer. Daniel believes they're meeting for a date. Helen believes she's interviewing someone connected to a growing political mystery.
Helen Drew.
How do you?
She said you gave her a Pez.
That misunderstanding is almost funny until you realize what it represents. Daniel still trusts the system. Helen doesn't. And history has repeatedly shown that when governments begin hiding information during a crisis, the reporters asking uncomfortable questions usually discover the truth first. Then comes one tiny object that longtime viewers immediately recognized: a simple, yellow duck Pez dispenser. For new viewers, it's nothing more than an awkward last-minute gift Daniel grabs before meeting Helen. But for everyone who's followed Silo since the beginning, that tiny toy changes everything. It's the exact same Pez dispenser discovered centuries later inside the silos, one of the oldest surviving artifacts from the world, before civilization collapsed. For 2 seasons, it looked like nothing more than a random relic. Season 3 quietly confirms it isn't random at all. It's a bridge between the world we lost and the world that hasn't been built yet. That tiny Pez dispenser isn't just a clever Easter egg for longtime fans. It's the episode quietly telling us that history inside Silo has never truly disappeared. For years, the people living underground have believed the world before the apocalypse was almost impossible to imagine. The relics they occasionally discover are treated like dangerous artifacts because they encourage curiosity about a past that the authorities desperately want to erase. Now, Season 3 completely reframes those objects. They're no longer random pieces of forgotten history. They're physical proof that every story inside the silos began with real people making real decisions. Daniel hands Helen that yellow duck without realizing it's one of the few objects that will outlive civilization itself. The audience understands the significance immediately, but the characters don't. That's what makes the scene so heartbreaking. They're standing at the edge of history without realizing they're about to become part of it. The episode also quietly introduces another mystery that almost overshadows the dirty bomb itself. Why does Senator Thurman seem so calm? Washington has just suffered one of the most devastating attacks in modern history. Politicians should be scrambling for answers, intelligence agencies should be operating in chaos, and military leaders should be reacting to an unpredictable crisis. Instead, Thurman appears strangely composed, almost as if she expected events to unfold this way. Looking back, every conversation she has with Daniel carries an entirely different meaning. She isn't simply responding to a disaster, she's preparing for what comes after it. That distinction changes everything because it raises an unsettling possibility. What if the attack wasn't the event that convinced powerful people to build the silos? What if the silos were already being planned long before the first bomb exploded? Daniel unknowingly becomes the perfect person to help bring that vision to life. The writers spend valuable screen time establishing his background in military engineering and architecture, because those aren't just details about his past, they're clues about his future. Building an underground city capable of sustaining human life for centuries would require someone who understands structural design, logistics, emergency infrastructure, and long-term planning. Daniel possesses all of those skills. More importantly, he also possesses something Senator Thurman desperately needs: integrity. If someone as honorable as Daniel can be convinced the project is necessary, then others will follow. The most effective lies are often built around people who genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. Charlotte's storyline reinforces that idea in a completely different way. After surviving the failed mission, she's left with a traumatic brain injury that robs her of the ability to recognize her own brother. It's one of the episode's most emotional moments, but it's also one of its most symbolic. Throughout Silo, memory has become almost as important as survival itself. Juliette's memories are chemically suppressed inside Silo 18, while Charlotte loses hers because of catastrophic physical trauma. Two completely different causes lead to the same devastating result. The writers wanted us to notice that parallel because memory isn't just another theme in this story. It's the foundation of identity. A society that controls memory can control history, and a society that controls history can shape the future however it chooses. Meanwhile, Helen quietly proves why journalism has always frightened powerful institutions. Unlike Daniel, she isn't satisfied with official explanations. She keeps asking uncomfortable questions about the attack, about Iran, and about what the government isn't telling the public. Most people see a crisis and look for reassurance. Helen sees crisis and looks for evidence. That's exactly why her role has been expanded so dramatically from the books. She represents something the future silos will eventually lose almost entirely: a free press willing to challenge authority. Looking back, her investigation feels less like a subplot and more like the beginning of the final attempt to expose the truth before the world disappears beneath concrete and steel. By the end of the episode, the real mystery is no longer whether humanity will survive the catastrophe. The clues suggest that someone has already accepted the world's fate and moved on to a far bigger question: who deserves to survive it? That's a terrifying shift because it transforms the silos from emergency shelters into something much darker. They stop feeling like humanity's last hope and start looking like a carefully controlled experiment. If that's true, then Daniel, Charlotte, and Helen aren't simply witnessing history. They're standing at the exact moment when the future of every person inside every silo is being decided, even though none of them realize it yet. And once that realization clicks into place, the entire series begins to look completely different.